March 14, 1945. Eastern Germany. The sky over Leipzig is the color of cold steel when Lucky Streak begins to fall. Moments earlier, she had been one of 18 B-24 Liberators in tight formation, engines droning in mechanical harmony as they approached a synthetic oil refinery buried deep inside collapsing Nazi industry. Now she is alone, slipping out of formation, one engine dead, another coughing oil, flak tearing black wounds through the air around her. Inside the cockpit, Captain Robert Hale is slumped forward against the yoke, blood spreading dark across his flight jacket. And in the right seat, Second Lieutenant James Calloway, 19 years old, 3 months out of training, is staring at a bomber that is no longer flying so much as surrendering to gravity. The altimeter unwinds. 18,000 feet. 17,500. The nose dips harder. Wind screams through fractured plexiglass where a 20mm shell punched into the cockpit seconds earlier. Calloway does not shout. He does not freeze. He does not think about the instructors who wrote in his file, lacks confidence under pressure. He reaches across Hale's body, drags him back from the controls, and wraps both hands around the yoke. The B-24 is heavy with bombs already dropped, fuel bleeding from a punctured tank, hydraulics compromised. She does not respond quickly. Momentum fights him. The dive steepens. He pulls. Every muscle in his shoulder strains. The control column trembles like something alive. The nose rises slowly, unwillingly. The descent flattens into something survivable. 14,000 feet. He levels the aircraft. Only then does he speak. Pilot incapacitated. I have control. Damage report. His voice surprises even him. Level, steady, almost clinical. The replies come fragmented through the intercom. Number 3 feathered. Number 2 oil pressure fluctuating. Hydraulics unreliable. Fuel leak confirmed. Tail gunner not responding. The formation is gone. The P-51 escorts are gone. The sky that minutes ago held friendly aircraft now holds nothing but gray emptiness and enemy ground below. They are 60 miles inside Germany. The bombardier suggests bailout. They have altitude. They have parachutes. They have fear. Calloway looks down through breaks in the cloud cover. Snow-dusted farmland. Villages. Rail lines. Roads. All hostile. The radio operator is wounded. The tail gunner may already be dead. Several crew members are disoriented. If they bail out separately, scattered across occupied territory, their odds collapse. If they stay together, in the airplane, their odds are worse. He chooses the worse option. We're staying with the ship. Prepare for emergency landing. No one argues. The bomber limps westward, 2 engines dragging her through hostile air. Control inputs feel soft, imprecise. The aircraft is wounded, but she still answers. 10,000 feet. 8,000. The cloud layer thins. Now the ground is no longer abstract. Individual trees emerge. Barn roofs. A frozen stream reflecting white light. No friendly airfield within reach. Fuel dropping. Altitude bleeding away. He scans not for salvation, but for geometry. A straight line. Something long enough. Something flat enough. Then he sees it. A road cutting through a shallow valley. Half a mile of relatively straight pavement. Not empty. A convoy of German trucks moves along it, but straight. Flat. Maintained. It is the only surface in sight long enough to try. He does not explain. There is no time. He orders the crew to brace. Manual gear extension requires brute force. He cranks the emergency handle. Shoulders burning. The mechanism fights him. He keeps turning until the gear locks with a heavy metallic thud. 5,000 feet. He lines up the approach. Crosswind from the left. The damaged stabilizer pulls slightly off-center. He counters with rudder. The trucks below scatter into ditches. German soldiers spill into frozen fields. Some fire rifles upward in useless defiance. Calloway ignores them. Airspeed 130. Too fast, and they overshoot into trees. Too slow, and they stall into houses. He retards throttles. The remaining engines fade into near silence. The bomber drops the last few feet and slams onto the road. Impact. Bounce. Slam again. The left tire explodes. The aircraft yaws violently toward a stone wall. He fights it. Right rudder, differential braking, instinct shaped by months of studying control systems most pilots skimmed past. The fuselage shrieks. The right wing clips a telephone pole. The aircraft spins 15 degrees, skids, and finally shudders to a halt in a shower of sparks and snow. Silence. Not peaceful silence, stunned silence. Then voices erupt. Someone laughing hysterically. Someone praying. Someone screaming for a medic. Calloway unbuckles slowly. Now his hands shake. He walks the length of the bomber, counting faces. 8 alive. 1 dead. German soldiers approach cautiously, rifles raised but not firing. The war for Lucky Streak is over. But 8 men are breathing. And none of them would have been if he had followed procedure. The road landing becomes legend long before it becomes history. But in March of 1945, it is simply survival. The crew of Lucky Streak are marched away at gunpoint, boots crunching over thawing frost, leaving behind the twisted bomber that should have killed them. German soldiers move around the wreck with stunned caution. A 4-engine aircraft does not belong on a country road. Not intact. Not upright. Calloway walks last. He does not look back. They are processed through a Luftwaffe holding facility near Nuremberg. Not brutal, not merciful. Just exhausted. The guards are older men and boys. The war is collapsing inward. Artillery rumbles in the distance most nights now. Inside the barracks, the crew replays the landing over and over. The navigator draws the descent angle in the dirt with a boot heel. We were dropping at nearly 1,800 feet per minute, he mutters one evening. 2 more minutes, and we'd have been a crater. The bombardier remembers the moment the gear locked, that heavy mechanical finality. The radio operator remembers the calm voice on the intercom. No shouting. No panic. Just instructions. Calloway does not embellish the story. When pressed, he answers in numbers. Airspeed. Fuel state. Control authority. Surface length. To him, it was never heroism. It was arithmetic under pressure. But the others know better. They had all assumed he would freeze. The cautious one. The quiet one. The co-pilot who read manuals during downtime while others gambled and told stories. They had misjudged him completely. In late April, American armored columns smash through the region. The camp is liberated without resistance. The war in Europe ends weeks later. The crew of Lucky Streak return west, thinner, quieter, older than their years. They are processed, debriefed, medically examined, demobilized. The Air Force is dissolving millions of servicemen back into civilian life. Paperwork floods offices. Reports stack high. Calloway's file receives a short notation. Emergency landing under combat conditions. Aircraft lost. Crew survival. 8. No medal. No ceremony. No headline. He returns to Ohio. Finishes a mechanical engineering degree he had interrupted for war. Marries. Takes a job in aircraft structural testing. He never tells the story at work. The story, however, does not disappear. In 1947, the newly independent United States Air Force begins studying wartime emergency procedures. Analysts comb through thousands of after-action reports searching for patterns, where doctrine worked and where it failed. A researcher at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base pauses over the Lucky Streak file. A 19-year-old co-pilot. 2 engines failing. Hydraulic damage. Enemy territory. Manual gear extension. Road landing. Survival rate. 8 of 9. The researcher requests transcripts from surviving crew members still in service. He interviews the navigator and bombardier. He begins to see something larger. Calloway did not follow standard procedure. Standard procedure in that situation was bailout. Instead, Calloway made 3 unconventional assessments. Crew survivability as a unit was higher than individual bailout survival. The environment could be converted from threat to resource. Aircraft controllability, though degraded, remained mathematically viable. He had not acted emotionally. He had acted analytically. The incident becomes a classified training case study, not because of heroism, but because of decision architecture. Instructors begin teaching a subtle shift. Doctrine is a foundation, not a cage. Pilots are encouraged to understand systems deeply: hydraulics, trim behavior, crosswind correction, structural tolerances, so that when procedures fail, thinking does not. The Lucky Streak case circulates anonymously. The road landing scenario. Cadets analyze it. Simulators attempt to replicate it. Most fail. Too steep. Too fast. Gear collapses. Wing strike. Cartwheel. The margin for success proves razor thin. The conclusion in training documents becomes clear. Improvisation without preparation is suicide. Improvisation built on knowledge is survival. Callaway is never notified. He continues working in structural load testing in California in the 1950s. He becomes respected for his meticulous calculations. He designs stress tolerances that prevent wing fatigue failures in early jet aircraft. He remains the same man he was in 1945, quiet, methodical, precise. In 1953, during a design review meeting at Lockheed, an Air Force colonel casually references the road landing case. Co-pilot saved 8 men by landing on a German supply road. We still teach it. Someone in the room asks who the pilot was. The colonel shrugs. Records buried somewhere. Tail number case study. Callaway says nothing. After the meeting, a co-worker who had flown B-24s during the war approaches him privately. That wouldn't happen to be you, would it? Callaway hesitates, then nods once. Why didn't you ever say anything? He answers simply. It seemed like what anyone would have done. The co-worker shakes his head. No, he says. It wasn't. Years pass. The story drifts quietly through aviation circles. By the time historians begin reassessing overlooked moments of the air war in the 1990s, the road landing has become part of institutional DNA, but still without a name. Dr. Ellen Pritchard, researching adaptive decision-making in combat aviation, tracks down the original tail number. From there, she finds Callaway. He initially refuses interviews. Eventually, after she shares excerpts from the navigator's wartime diary, he agrees to a single meeting. At 76, he sketches the approach angle again on a legal pad. He explains his thinking in the same flat tone he used in the cockpit. He points out where luck intervened. The road's length. The absence of incoming artillery at that exact moment. The fact that the trucks moved fast enough to clear the landing path. He never once uses the word hero. When Pritchard asks how he remained calm, he pauses. Then he says, "Panic is just noise, and noise doesn't solve problems." He dies in 2003. The following year, Pritchard's book publishes the full account. The Air Force reviews the case. In 2005, a medal is issued posthumously. His family accepts it at Wright-Patterson in a small ceremony. The citation reads, "For exceptional airmanship and decisive action under combat conditions, resulting in the survival of 8 crew members." But the more lasting recognition is quieter. The training manual is updated. The case study now includes his name. Second Lieutenant James Callaway. Co-pilot. Methodical. Unremarkable. Until the moment it mattered. James Callaway never considered himself extraordinary. But on a cold road in Germany, his preparation became the difference between 8 funerals and 8 futures. The men he saved never forgot. At reunions decades later, they would still talk about that morning in March 1945, about the shattered cockpit glass, the engines coughing themselves toward silence, the ground rising too fast. They would laugh about the trucks scattering into ditches and the absurdity of sliding a 4-engine bomber onto a country road. But the laughter always ended the same way, with a quiet acknowledgement. "We were dead," the navigator once said. Until we weren't. They had misjudged him. All of them had. The quiet co-pilot. The cautious one. The man who read manuals instead of playing cards. They thought he lacked instinct. What he had instead was discipline. In the decades after the war, aviation culture began to change. For years, pilot mythology had centered around natural talent. The fearless ace, the instinctive flyer, the man born with wings in his blood. But the data emerging from wartime studies told a different story. The most consistent survivors were not always the boldest. They were the most prepared. Case studies like Lucky Streak influenced how future pilots were trained. Instructors began emphasizing system mastery over bravado. Cadets were pushed to understand hydraulics, trim behavior, asymmetric thrust, terrain evaluation, not just procedures, but principles. The lesson embedded itself quietly. When systems fail, knowledge must replace instinct. And instinct must be trained. In 2011, a group of aviation students traveled to Germany on a historical research program. One of them had read about the Lucky Streak landing. Using archived maps and coordinates, they located the approximate stretch of road. It was wider now. Paved. Quiet. No sign marked what had happened there. The students stood in the fields and tried to imagine it. The roar of failing engines, the rush of wind through shattered glass, the impossible geometry of aligning a crippled bomber with half a mile of pavement. Back at their university, they built a simulation. Most attempts ended in catastrophic failure. Too steep, too shallow, too fast, gear collapse, wing strike. The margin for success was razor thin. When they finally achieved a successful landing in the model, it required near-perfect control inputs and split-second judgment. Their conclusion was unanimous. It wasn't luck. It was preparation meeting opportunity. Callaway never sought recognition. He never reframed the event as heroism. He called it a problem that required solving. That was his worldview. Understand the machine. Understand the variables. Control what you can. Accept what you cannot. Act anyway. He had not been fearless. He had been terrified. But fear did not control the equation. Noise does not solve problems. Preparation does. 8 men went on to live full lives because one co-pilot refused to surrender to the obvious outcome. He did not rewrite the war. He did not win a campaign. He simply refused to let panic make his decisions. And in doing so, he changed what aviation believed about greatness. Not born, built. One manual page at a time. One quiet question at a time. One impossible landing at a time. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear think for you. And on a frozen road in Germany in 1945, that refusal saved 8 lives.